Welcome to Primary Source. I'm John and Amaya. If you're fed up with mainstream media, this is your podcast. If you're tired of official media propaganda, this is your podcast. So help us out and subscribe today. Today, we're diving into the complex world of what's being called the technological Cold War, specifically looking at U.S. AI export controls and how they're shaping the tech rivalry with China. The Biden administration in its final days implemented an interim final rule to regulate the global diffusion of AI, imposing restrictions on advanced chips to 150 middle-tier countries while maintaining existing embargoes on China. This move was largely seen as an acknowledgement that previous controls failed to fully prevent China's access to AI-enabling technologies through third parties.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating here is the potential shift under a Trump administration. They're anticipated to take a decisively different approach, likely repealing or significantly revising Biden-era AI restrictions. This isn't just a policy tweak. It's a philosophical pivot that could drastically alter the competitive landscape. The biggest question it raises for me is, does loosening these controls truly boost U.S. competitiveness, or does it simply give China an easier pathway to advanced AI technologies?
That's a critical point. On one hand, critics of the current restrictions argue they could reduce global demand for U.S. chips and incentivize non-U.S. computing ecosystems, potentially weakening America's long-term AI leadership. But on the other hand, if we open the floodgates, aren't we directly aiding a strategic competitor? How do policymakers truly balance the immediate economic benefits for U.S. firms with the long-term national security implications?
You've hit on the core dilemma, and this isn't just theoretical. We're already seeing tangible economic impacts. U.S. export controls on advanced AI chips to China have reportedly led to a significant drop in U.S. chip sales to China, with some estimates suggesting a decline of over 50% in certain segments. This directly hits the bottom line of American companies and fuels the debate about whether the policy is worth the economic pain.
That 50% drop is stark, but let's look at it from China's perspective. They're not just sitting idle. The source material mentions Chinese AI companies are increasing their reliance on domestic chip manufacturers and exploring alternative supply chains. Is this a temporary workaround, or could these restrictions inadvertently be accelerating China's drive towards self-sufficiency in AI, ultimately making them an even more formidable independent competitor?
That's the billion-dollar question. It's a classic case of sanctions potentially spurring domestic innovation in the long run. This dynamic interplay between restriction and reaction underscores that U.S. AI export policy is a high-stakes game with no easy answers. The debate isn't just about limiting access, but about understanding how those limitations ripple through global markets and potentially reshape the very innovation landscape. This brings us naturally to the other side of the coin, China's own rapid advancements and how they're being perceived globally.
Right? Shifting our focus to China's advancements, the emergence of the DeepSeek R1 chatbot has been described as a Sputnik moment for the United States. This development, as reported by CapitalThinkingBlog.com, really underscores the perceived inadequacy of past U.S. controls. David Sachs, an AI and crypto advisor to President Trump, explicitly stated that DeepSeek's release was evidence that Biden's policies constrained American AI companies without effectively restricting China's advancements.
That's a powerful analogy, a Sputnik moment, suggesting a sudden and significant challenge to U.S. technological leadership. But what's truly striking is not just the technological leap, but the immediate international regulatory scrutiny it triggered. Italy's data protection authority, the Garante, has formally demanded explanations on how DeepSeek handles Italian users' data following accusations that its privacy policy violates multiple provisions of the EU's GDPR. This isn't just about tech anymore. It's about global governance and data sovereignty.
The GDPR violation claims in the White House review over national security threats are significant. Beyond the immediate legal challenges, what do these reactions tell us about the broader global concerns regarding Chinese AI companies, especially given the past scrutiny faced by firms like TikTok? Is this a pattern of distrust emerging around data security and state influence?
It certainly seems to be, and here's where it gets even more complex. Sachs himself acknowledged evidence that DeepSeek improperly used data from U.S. company models to train its own. If this is true, it highlights a fundamental tension. While the U.S. tries to restrict China's access to the hardware, the chips, we seem to be failing to protect the intellectual property, the actual brains of our AI models. It raises the question of how U.S. companies can effectively guard their proprietary data in such a competitive and ethically ambiguous landscape.
That's a crucial vulnerability. If we step back from the geopolitical chess game for a moment and consider the average user, what are the most significant risks they face when interacting with a platform like DeepSeek R1, especially given the concerns about data retention and user profiling? How does this Sputnik moment translate into everyday privacy anxieties for individuals?
It translates directly into a lack of control and transparency. When your data is stored in a jurisdiction with different and often weaker privacy laws, you lose recourse. The DeepSeek R1 case clearly illustrates that China's AI advancements are not just a technological race, but a battleground for data ethics, intellectual property, and national security. This brings us to another critical piece of the puzzle: the physical infrastructure of AI, the chips themselves, and how their global dynamics are shaping strategic alliances.
Let's turn our attention to the physical backbone of AI, the chips. The accelerating global demand is driving significant deals, often navigating the intricate landscape of U.S. export restrictions. A prime example is Nvidia, which recently secured a landmark deal to supply over 260,000 Blackwell AI chips to South Korea. What makes this so interesting is that these are Nvidia's most advanced processors subject to U.S. national security export restrictions for countries like China. But South Korea, as a close U.S. ally, is not subject to the same bans.
This deal is incredibly telling. It highlights how the U.S. is selectively leveraging its technological advantage to bolster allies while containing rivals. The fact that South Korea is investing so heavily with these chips intended to power large-scale AI data centers and AI factories for robotics and autonomous vehicles shows a national priority to build an AI ecosystem that can rival global tech hubs. These aren't just commercial transactions, they are geopolitical chess moves shaping the future balance of technological power.
You frame that perfectly as geopolitical chess moves. Beyond South Korea, Nvidia's global expansion includes recent agreements in Japan, India, and the Middle East. What does this widespread demand tell us about the global race for AI infrastructure?
It tells us that every developed nation now sees AI infrastructure as essential national infrastructure, just like highways or the power grid. You mentioned AI factories, which can be an abstract concept. A good way to think about it is this: if data is the new oil, then these massive clusters of AI chips are the new hyper-advanced refineries. South Korea isn't just buying tools, it's building the industrial engine for its entire 21st century economy.
That's a great analogy. So South Korea is essentially building its own massive digital age refineries. But while these deals strengthen allies, they also underscore a potential dependency. What are the long-term consequences if countries become highly reliant on a single supplier like Nvidia for their critical AI infrastructure? Does it create new vulnerabilities?
Absolutely. It creates a significant strategic dependency. This global scramble for AI chips, driven by both market demand and geopolitics, underscores the immense power wielded by the companies that produce these foundational technologies. And no company exemplifies this influence more than Nvidia, which not only supplies the chips but actively seeks to shape the very policies governing their distribution.
Nvidia, under CEO Jensen Huang, has become an absolutely pivotal player, recently surpassing a $5 trillion market valuation, but their influence extends beyond the market. They're actively seeking to influence U.S. trade policy. Despite Huang's differing views from former President Trump on some issues, he's actually gained favor within Trump's orbit, with Trump even publicly lauding him.
That's a crucial insight. It's not just about what governments decide, but how powerful corporate entities like Nvidia actively shape those decisions. The fact that Huang is reportedly seeking to persuade a potential Trump administration to allow the company to resume sales of more advanced AI chips to China is a huge deal. It puts Nvidia squarely at the intersection of corporate profit motives and national security, essentially asking how much market access is too much when it comes to strategic technologies.
That's the core tension, isn't it? From a business perspective, China is a massive market, and restricting access impacts Nvidia's bottom line. But from a national security standpoint, providing cutting-edge AI chips could directly empower a strategic adversary. How does a company like Nvidia justify lobbying for sales to China while the U.S. government is actively trying to limit that access?
It's a delicate dance. Nvidia's strategy appears to be a dual one: secure massive deals with U.S. allies like South Korea, cementing its role in the Western tech ecosystem, while simultaneously pushing for broader market access in China to fuel growth. This really tests the long-term viability of strict export controls. If the very companies producing the technology are lobbying against them, it could create a scenario where U.S. policy is constantly being undermined by powerful corporate interests.
That's a very real possibility. Let's consider this from the perspective of an everyday American taxpayer or even a U.S. defense strategist. How might they view Nvidia's lobbying efforts? Would they see it as a pragmatic business move vital for American companies to remain globally competitive, or as a potentially dangerous compromise of national security for corporate gain?
There's no easy answer, and that's what makes this so complex. Nvidia's strategic positioning underscores that this technological Cold War is not just between nations, but also involves powerful corporate actors whose interests can both align with and diverge from national policy. Their influence highlights the multi-layered nature of this rivalry.
So, to pull this all together, what we're seeing is a U.S. AI export policy in constant flux, caught between national security fears and the economic realities of global competition.
Right. And at the same time, China's own rapid advancements like DeepSeek are triggering a Sputnik moment for the U.S., forcing a reassessment of everything from data privacy to intellectual property protection on a global scale.
And at the heart of it all are the AI chips and the companies that make them, like Nvidia, who are not just participants, but powerful players, shaping policy, forging alliances, and creating new geopolitical dependencies.
It's a complex web of technology, economics, and power politics, with no simple heroes or villains.
This technological rivalry really extends beyond mere economic competition. It is a fundamental clash of ideologies regarding innovation, governance, and the very architecture of future global power. As nations and corporations navigate this complex landscape, the choices made today will not only determine who leads in AI, but also reshape the geopolitical order, challenging us to consider the long-term implications for global cooperation, ethical development, and the balance of technological power in an increasingly interconnected yet fragmented world.